Hello and welcome to our Friday fun website teardown stream where we will be tearing down our website with the power of 3D story. And today I am particularly excited because, first of all, I have my slides on the very last slide, which I love to do. I love to go all the way to the end and forget to send it all the way to the beginning. And so I love doing that. And we did it again today. And we are talking about the thing that I care about the most in this world, because it is my world. It's all of our worlds. And that is story, not storytelling, but story. Storytelling is an expression of story. So I'm excited for that. But I'm even more excited for something else. And if you picked up on or know a little bit about anybody in particular, somebody special is going to be joining us for today's teardown with the power of 3D story. And that person is no other than Fred Studer. And I've got Fred here today. Welcome, Fred.
Thank you, Matthew, for hosting me. I'm so privileged and excited to not only work again with you, because we've done this before, but not ever in this capacity. And it's exciting to join your audience live here.
And why are you excited though? What is it about today that's going on in your story?
So Matthew, today is so special because I'll be honest, you and I have worked a lot together, but and I think it's an opportunity to really tell people it's not just about the storytelling, it's really about the story, and that everybody has an opportunity to find their story and create their story every day. And I think at the end, really, even me going through the process myself, I now am more clear on my story and what I can contribute. And I think the audience is going to be really excited. So I'm fired up, not only just to work again with you in this capacity, but I think, people are going to gain a lot and be able to drive a lot more impact in whatever role they have.
I love it. You remind me of, for years, I was working in marketing and thinking to myself, every once in a while, it's not like I'm a doctor solving cancer or something like that, right? Is what I'm doing meaningful? And I would tell myself, well, I'm helping the doctors because they're using the products, right? I'm kind of standing, sort of in the background kind of thing. And it still kind of is that background thing. But now it's about this power of story. It's about everybody having a story, the big story, the story of the month, the story of the day, the story tomorrow, and being able to help even one person with that is contribution. It is solving, maybe not cancer, but it's solving big problems that people are trying to wrestle with. It helps people get that clarity. And so I love that you said that. It's absolutely something that gets me fired up as well. So we mentioned the power of story and the power of 3D story. What do we mean by the power of 3D story? Well, I want to go back a little bit further, and I want to ask you, Fred, do you remember hiring me for a certain type of job that maybe had something to do with all this stuff?
I do remember very clearly. Matthew, you and I think it was 2007, we started working together in the office business of Microsoft. And we had started to kind of engage around just how the office business had completely changed, and it really needed a lot of work. And I got transferred to go lead the Dynamics business, which is really the business that competes against Oracle and SAP and even Salesforce. And I realized that not all the elements were very clear. There wasn't a true value proposition. It was all over the map. And so I remember calling you up and literally saying, hey, meet me for lunch. What are you doing? And we met near Bellevue Square. And I said, how would you like to be the chief storyteller of Microsoft Business Dynamics? And you said, what the? You didn't swear though. It was a good word. But yeah, that set off not only a creative process that you and I think we really defined. You've obviously codified it into a company that you have, but we made such great waves, positive waves at Microsoft that a lot of the work that you and I did to create story that was authentic and believable and Microsoft. So yes, I remember that moment very well, and it was a privilege to get the chance to work with you.
Fred, I'm getting feelings right now. I'm getting hairs standing. I remember that lunch. I remember that. And, you know, at that time, I wanted to have more of an impact. I wanted to be able to get closer to that idea of purpose, of helping solve some type of problem in the world. And so the opportunity to come and do that, and to do that with you, was a way for me to start to find my way to untangle that and to achieve that. And it started an amazing process. But funnily enough, as is the case with life, our stories are often overlapping. It's like overlapping Venn diagrams, our own stories, right? Yes, with each other too, but our own stories. So as one story is starting to end, another story starts to begin. It's the idea of a door opening. When one door closes, another door opens. And why I say that is because when I started, I was excited, and there was a lot of excitement, but it wasn't all excitement, right? So here I was thinking, yay, I'm going to get paid to write to do stories rather than the novels that I've got still languishing here because of just not getting them completely finished. So all that excitement, and I sit down and I start to look around for the tools in the tool belt. I remember an old mentor of mine, Nick Drew, sales guy at Intel, saying, don't reinvent the wheel if you can help it. Find if somebody's done it before. And so I went, I looked, and I panicked. And I don't want anybody who's joining us today to panic like I did. And it's perfectly natural when you get thrown into a situation and you're trying to figure it out, for a bit of a panic to set in, isn't it?
It is, and you can only think about this, and I'll be brief, but Matthew, if you remember correctly, right after you accepted that job, the Dynamics business, who was being run by Satya Nadella, who now is the CEO of Microsoft, was not happy with the way that Dynamics was being positioned. And so we were immediately, I think we had it might have been a little less than 3 months to completely recraft the narrative. That's what we called it at the time. But really, we were reinventing story on the fly of how to have every single person at Microsoft, who really at that point didn't even know what Dynamics stood for. They knew Xbox, they knew Office, they knew Azure, they didn't know Dynamics. And so we had a specifically huge challenge that we had to overcome. And neither one of us panicked. I think we started to, and I think we both looked at each other's eyes and we were writing on the board, like, what does this look like? And we unwound that, we paused, and we took our time, and that process still holds true. And I know that you've completely perfected it as we go through Go Narratives processes, but that's what really got to what I will tell you Microsoft is still using. They've never changed it. They're still using the logo on the car that we created. It might be called Alpine, but it was Lotus and then Renault and now Alpine, because that story that we told so well got traction. Mm-hmm. And the fact that they still use that is just, again, great merit to the success that we both had in shifting Microsoft's position in thinking about story in a different way.
Arguably, it was at the forefront of what became a wave of storytelling in business. And it's a great thing in many ways, but also we hear that word again, storytelling. And that's where a lot of people trip up. and why we do what we do in these streams, let alone the other stuff we do, is if you start with storytelling, it's kind of also the panic that I had when I was trying to find a perfect tool for storytelling in business. And that was, I found the hero's journey and Hollywood stuff, but the hero's journey, Fred, there's some versions of it like 17 steps. You remember
that's too many
down
steps. That would make me panic.
I know. It's like, wait, hold on a sec. Dark Knight of the Soul. How does that relate to Microsoft Dynamics or whatever your product is, right? What is that like? How you translate that for me, right? And I love the F1 reference as well for multiple reasons. But the tool set in F1, the constant reinvention from the high tech to the guy who's still there with the hammers tapping, right? The right tool for the right job. Hero's journey ain't the right job for figuring out the story of your business, and that your business can be your business, it can be your actual business, right? And hello, Esther, by the way, thanks for joining us. Esther Christopherson's in the house. Hero's journey. She says, love the hero's journey. I gotta pause. I gotta slow down, just like you said. Like, this is so important for multiple reasons. I get a real kick out of that when I'm writing one of these novels. Yeah, the hero's journey is something that's going to be cropping up and making sense, and it's because it's the right tool for that job. So when I slam on the hero's journey, when I slam on Hollywood, it's about context. It's about helping you in your business, which can be individual, it can be your company, but whatever your business is, finding those right tools. And some of them are just too complicated, Fred, and some of them are a little bit on the, shall we say, simple side.
They are on the simple side. And I think your reference to Hollywood, like if I, I've been a CMO for the last like 12 years. I would never hire anybody out of Hollywood because their stories are they're too fictional and fantastical. They're supposed to be. Like, nobody lives in Yellowstone. Although I have those cowboy hats, I could roll in, but I'm no John Dutton, right? When you're selling a solution, and we're mostly talking to either B2B or B2C software as a service companies, or really whatever service or product that you're selling, that story shouldn't be a Hollywood story. It needs to be the story of the persona that you're trying to sell to. And that compelling moment that they realize that is that moment that you get the privilege to then go tell them more about why you're unique and why your solution or your service is the only one for them.
You know what? You couldn't have said it better, and Esther couldn't have framed it better. Context is everything, right? That's what you're saying. Like the Hollywood context, the persona context, the business context, the problem you're trying to solve. So that is absolutely bang on. Thank you, Esther, for that. That's hits a nail on the head. And simple can be as much of a problem, because if something's too abstract, it's like, well, beginning, where do we start, right? Middle, what goes in the middle? End? Are we talking a call to action because this is business? Is something special we need to do? And that's why I felt this compulsion to come up with something that struck a balance, that gave you a little bit more than the beginning, middle, and end, but didn't swamp you with terminology or ideas. And that was a Goldilocks moment for me, right? And that Goldilocks moment when it comes to storytelling in business is always starting with what we want, right?
Yeah, I mean, you really hit it, Matthew. I mean, I think this is where you can really elaborate more, but what we really created was, it doesn't matter what we want to sell, whether we're at Microsoft or Oracle or Salesforce or really any company. It matters how your ultimate buyer feels about you. Are they confident? Do they know that and believe that you can solve their problem? Do they know that you personally care about knowing who they are and what you can do to help them? And that's why that heart and a magnifying glass, it should be the biggest thing that everybody sees when you're starting to create a story. And that's what I call, perspective over, just perception. It's huge.
It is huge, and let's make it huge. It's the you said something in there about what they want. They want somebody that's going to help them, that's going to be there on the journey with them. These are very important when it comes to the kind of decisions that I love helping business leaders solve, and I know you do too. And that is big problems, big businesses, big technologies. And if you're going to go down the route of doing a rip and replace on some big system, one of the things you want isn't just the fancy new way of doing things. You want to know that you're going to be safe in a job in 6 months' time. Not like one of the things we have with our security client technology companies is you don't want to be on the stand, right?
Yeah, there is actually criminal risk in some of these things if you don't do them right.
And that leads us to the fact that, do we always get what we want?
Matthew, unfortunately, the answer to that is no. And to be honest, that's a good thing if you know how to navigate the storms.
And what happens when we navigate a storm?
Well, you figure out obstacles pretty quickly, and there's usually 3 decisions that people make when you hit an obstacle. You either, the most common one is you retreat and you go think about, oh my God, you do a bunch of analysis on what's that, or you try to go around the obstacle, which in some cases maybe that's a quick way to do it, but at least what you and I have found is, we think best when you just aim right for the storm and you go through the storm and you're learning along the way, because at some point what you'll find, and I don't know if this analogy will relate. I grew up in Colorado on a farm. Unfortunately, cows run away from the storm and they suffer a lot because the storm just keeps going. So they get really wet. But the buffalo, they're smart enough. They run right through the storm because they know the quickest way out of it is going through it. And that's what we discovered.
I'd always wondered why they only had a coat on the front half.
And the big horns. Nicely
exactly.
done.
That's what you need if you're going to run headlong into a storm. You need a big ass coat on the front and some big ass horns on the top.
But don't panic, because the storm, in many cases, as we've found, most storms aren't as bad as you think. They're really not.
Esther, I'm so glad that Esther joined today, because I remember back in the day when we were talking about this very topic, and she had made a comment about this was back in the dynamics days. She had made a comment about fear and being scared, and how there's these base emotional responses that we have that it's no different. Let me put it this way. It's no different than if there's an actual tiger.
Yeah.
Right there. Like our body, it can't differentiate. Our fundamental lizard brain, core ancient parts of us can't differentiate between a tiger and a lion, or a tiger and a storm, or a rip and replace of a system, or being on the stand, I get with some government suing issue that's come up because you've broken some regulation. We're feeling the same thing in our bodies. And that's the number of times I find myself saying to folks, like, emotions are not fluffy. In fact, if you think emotions are fluffy, you're only thinking about one very specific emotion, and that's comfort, right?
Yeah, which is the opposite of fear, which is what most people, that's our natural reaction. Again, going back biologically, we were in our genetics trained to run away from things that could kill us. But now that we've gotten smarter, and especially because there aren't lions, tigers, and bears running around now, we might say that some companies that we compete with are acting like lions, tigers, and bears. We can't treat our customers like that. They want to feel protected, because their bosses, their competitors are the lions, tigers, and bears of their business. And your company needs to have the story that gives them comfort and confidence that you can help them alleviate that fear. Going back to Matthew, don't panic, pause for a second, and let's think of what the right story is that's personally, authentically true. And, Matthew, we kind of joke. It's like we sometimes say, create the itch. But you're creating a compelling event for them to want to shift, because even that in itself could be scary for people. So everything that you talk about on the website, everything that you talk about in your material has to be clear and simple. And so when Matthew talks about story, it's getting that succinct, authentic, believable, and very differentiated value that only you do. And that needs to come into the ears, either reading or hearing, to your audience, where they feel that comfort, confidence that they want to move forward with you. And when you hit that moment, that's great. And I will say, Matthew, if I may, that's not just for like your roles at your companies. We want you that this is very important, because we all work and we want to make our stories great. But every day you have a chance to create your own story. It's yours. You control it. Nobody else does. And I think a lot of these tools are not only helpful from a professional perspective, but I use them in my personal life as well.
Fred, I absolutely love it. And it's all about tools, whether it's a chapstick or it's a playbook or it's a lightsaber, right? These are all tools to do a certain job, and we learn, right? And that's the wonderful thing about this. You can learn how to understand your story. And when you do that, you understand these basics and you understand the power of your story and the power of the 3D of your story, which is all of those components together: the desire that you want, the difficulty that stands in your way, and the denouement. Challenge anybody to say that. Say that in the rafters, right? The denouement. Complex word, very intentionally included because it's going to make you remember it. Two simple words in a complicated one. It's a French word, and it means the untangling of the knot. And it's more than a solution. It's more than a product. It's more than a process. It's more than an approach. It's all of those things together, and it's uniquely yours and the story that you're currently in. And we're all in those every single day. I guarantee everybody who's listening to this is currently trying to untangle some kind of knot. And
only the French can make that sound so beautiful. Untangling the giant hairball.
I want to know
your
why.
word is so much better.
I want to know why the French untangled so many knots at some point in the past that they needed a specific word for the untangling of the knot. So if you know what that is, please answers on a postcard to the PO box on our website, because I would love to know why the French were spending so much time untangling knots. And maybe it was because they were trying to get out of the bonds that the English had put them in after the Battle of Agincourt, for example.
Yeah, I don't know anything about that, Matthew. Sorry.
What is Esther? Every day you have a chance to create your own story. How empowering. Thank you, Esther. Yes, it is so empowering. And this kind of have a dual feeling about the word empowering, because Microsoft back in the day, man, when we were in productivity, the corporate team, like, talk about overusing that poor word. Wonderful word. Love it. Let's take the power back. Let's empower ourselves to use the word empowered. Okay. What we're all here for. An example of the real world and what this means in the real world. And that's why we do these, because, hey man, like, if you're gonna put your best foot forward nowadays, then you need to make sure that you've got your best foot forward on your website, don't you? It's like what else? It's like going into any public situation, the epitomous cocktail party, right? And not putting your best foot forward. Like, would you go into a cocktail party and just like, I don't know, in your pajamas and not having brushed your teeth and just kind of go in all grumpy and just be like, okay, who needs some information from me? I'm here.
You bring up something funny, and I'll let you go into the next piece. But the way, obviously, I look at every one of my competitors' websites. I look at their competitors' websites. I look at who, using AI. What are the best websites? And I love this notion of the teardown. But it really does come down to how quickly can you get an emotional connection with whoever is on your website. And right now, it's kind of hard to even drive attention to websites unless you have a Super Bowl ad. So, unless you're Geico or who was it, Uber, and Matthew McConaughey got some time on there. It's really hard. So your ideal motto is to get the right story that's succinct, clear, and believable, and it has to be authentic. And I think this notion of just the 3D story, and it really is unraveling to get that. Even personally, how do you unknot all of these complex things that make up your company story or your product story or your own personal story? It's hugely important.
Well, that's a part of the beauty of it as well. And the reason why it is beautiful is if you can do it and practice it on yourself, what happens is you start to understand it in other people. So you start to get better at understanding your story. You start to get better at understanding other people's stories. We're talking about empathy. We're talking about perspective. We're talking about connection. Like, this is so much more than telling. So much more than telling. And it's because it's our operating system. That's why storytelling works. It's our operating system. It's how we see the world. Like, we're putting ourselves in the world, into our story. Our brain is doing that. Mine's doing it. Yours is doing it. Esther's is doing it. We're all doing that. And so the way we talk about it works with that. It comes from that. And that's why the telling exists. And the telling on a homepage, shall we get ready to get spun up here to do our victim? So to be really clear on this, our victims here have not chosen for us to go off onto the public internet and choose to use them, but that's where they are. So we don't have permission to do this. We do randomly. For Valentine's Day, we did a flower company, Book, which amazingly does a terrible job of storytelling. And we've done CrowdStrike, and we've done Snowflake, and today we have OneShield. Technology company in the insurance sector. Fred, are you getting any tingles? What's going on? Tell me what you're feeling as you look at this website.
Well, if you call tingles of me worried that they might need a new CMO and probably a new person to craft some of the content here, just not even looking at this for very long, there's no clear value proposition. Like I know who these people are. I mean, they're one of the leaders in insurance protection. That's nowhere. I can't even see it. Like, it doesn't matter how pretty those graphics are. I'm not like the creativity and the beauty of the website is great, but if you don't have a clear value proposition and a way for somebody to quickly engage in that narrative itself, and there isn't a clear strategy on how they could learn more, and I don't see any of that on this page. Like, and they've got, like, I know this company, they've got they do so great in their market, but they're failing in telling the story. So if I'm a prospect of them, I would immediately just probably move to their next competitor and see how they tell their story, let's say, just emotionally connects with them, going back to your word.
And there's also folks who aren't haven't stepped into the space yet, who maybe are still doing stuff with homegrown solutions, or are relying on services or other people to help them with it. And so you could be talking about customers who are just getting into the category, right? And
Totally.
As you and I know, when it comes to technology, there's a lot of long-term business success without a lot of intentional storytelling, outbound growth building. There's a lot of growth through re-upping, a lot of growth through expanding, whether it's seats or license growth. There's a lot of there's referral based. There's CIO moves from one company to another and then implements. A lot of growth happens like that. I'm not saying there's no marketing. I'm thinking about the markets and how you approach it, but there's a lot of wasted energy. There's a lot of wheels spinning, and that
there's almost too much going on here. And like Matthew, I've read enough of and we've worked together on this, and even Esther, working with us, in the past before. It's like, does it, every time you and I would write keynotes or whatever that story was, it's like, how do we want people to feel at the end of this? Do we want them to feel excited? Do we want them to feel a little bit of frustration and then bring them back? Do they know why they should care? And ultimately, at the end, and we start at the beginning, which is creating that emotional excitement, hopefully, and then you get the privilege to have a call to ask, that what should you do? Is it risky for you not to take action? And I don't think this site does any of those things very well.
I'm not feeling any urgency. So move beyond. For starters, I know where this kind of stuff comes from, and I want to hit pause, and whether it is OneShield or CrowdStrike or anybody that owns the homepage for one of these companies, I want to reach out into your story for a second and look at the second D that you have to deal with and manage, and that is, you have a lot of stakeholders, you have a lot of pressure, there's a lot of politics, and you're trying to do the right thing. And unfortunately, through that process, the urgency and the emotion is frequently beaten out of what we're trying to communicate. And we end up having conversations about things like, for example, I can just imagine where this move beyond came from, right? Especially with the tagline, systems and strategies that keep P&C insurers and MJs moving forward. So they've obviously got some thoughts, research, maybe customer feedback about not having progress, things not getting what they want, being stuck, that they don't have a plan or strategy, and they definitely don't have a system to do it, and that moving beyond represents that, right? So it's this thing, and you want to move beyond that thing to the other side. So I can imagine that's where it came from. And if you work at OneShield and it's not, I'd be fascinated, because I think I just figured it out, right? And it's not, when you've spent your entire life writing your own story, this is my 1990 diary. When you've spent your whole life writing your handwriting every day, you tend to get quite adept at connecting the stories to the bits and pieces in between. So I'm guessing that I've guessed right on that one. I'm gonna say I think I got that right. But what does it mean to me as a prospect?
I agree. It's like, they're fun words, move beyond, but even their tag, systems and strategies that keep, insurers and MGAs moving forward, to what? Like, what is the value? What is the impact that OneShield uniquely does beyond all of their competitors? And they're missing that. And these are the words that are right on there. So Apple could use this, move beyond on taking my picture. It's just like, it doesn't hit the specificity of the buyer, and I will not be able to create any emotional connection with them with this.
They're not helping me find the itch, are they?
There is no itch. There's no mosquito bite. I didn't have to read about it.
Well, you don't have to read about a mosquito to know that it's biting you, right? You feel it.
Yeah. and
or after the fact, you
this
feel
site
that.
isn't, yeah, this site is not making me feel anything, right?
And we have the opportunity with language to trigger that, right? Like recently we're dealing with a big flood issue, and in the process of redoing stuff, we had to turn off the water mains, and then we had to turn it back on again. When we turned it back on again, it turned out that the washer had failed. I tell you what, I felt that, and I felt that urgency as I was grabbing more towels and working with the plumber to get it triaged. And guess what's top of my to-do list right now is figure out, like, what type of replacement am I going to put in there? Do I want to put a smart one in there? Do I want to put what was in there before? Do I want a ball one, right? But it's urgency. I've got to deal with it. And if I say to you, your water mains in your house, if it's not opened and closed every year, it will fail. And when you need to turn it off and turn it back on again, it will fail. If you haven't done it for 3 or 4 years, it will fail.
It will.
So
Absolutely.
what are you feeling right now as I say that? Or Esther, I mean, what are you feeling, Fred, when I say that? When I tell you about literally what I'm talking about, the water thing, what's in your mind?
Yeah, it's terrifying.
You going to do something about it?
Yeah.
Did I just change your to-do list for your beautiful home?
You made me feel differently, right? You made me think, well, crap, what if that happens? This is all I've got right now. I better save it.
So maybe, I mean, you might want to write this down or make a note, like water main, plumber, get it checked. Maybe get the ball one. If you get a ball one, you can add on a smart one if you want to go down that route.
Yeah.
And those are more reliable, apparently.
Yeah, Esther basically hit it. It's urgency. Like,
yeah,
what, and this goes back to the caveman days. It's like, hey, I've got to have a sense of urgency. Hunter gatherer, I got to go, like, something, like, we go into protect mode. And, as marketers, I don't think we want to go that far into scaring people into, feeling scared. Like your notion of don't panic. Because at the end of the day, we're not curing cancer. We're helping people cure cancer through some of the solutions. Many of you maybe sell medical equipment. Maybe you're doing that. But the right story, like everything that we're doing, is aiding maybe indirectly to driving impact for the entire planet. And that's how you have to think about your story. But you have to be specific. You can't be like many of you have probably seen Silicon Valley, the comedy. And it all comes down to, I developed this, algorithm that shrinks data and we're able to save, millions of gallons of water in Africa. Like that connection is just too crazy diverse. So the specificity of your story and the emotional connection to authentic, what can you actually do and then deliver it? That's really what matters.
It goes back to what Esther's previous comment about context is everything, right? And if we look at, if you're in, One Shield's shoes, right? And if, let's say, your particular value proposition is about the migration, maybe it's not, right? And if it's not, then this wouldn't hit the mark, but that's okay because you come up with something different. But if it is migration, you could do something as simple. And remember, we're not writing a novel here. We're not making a movie. We're talking about story. And the expression of that story in this case could be something as simple as your insurance systems are costing you millions. We fix that without the migration headache.
Exactly.
And it's that one word. There's value in the other things, costing you millions. That's an okay thing to be a bit scared about. It's not full-blown fear. But the headache, because that's where we're starting to get to, again, not fluffy emotions.
Yeah, it's a pain point. It's a legitimate pain point that they feel. And if you can address that and say, hey, I confidently can tell you, if that's your headache, and I know it's your headache because I've done the research, we can help you.
Because we have what now? We have a reason to care.
Yeah, we care. We show that emotion.
It's like you care a little bit more about the plumbing. And so anybody who listens to this, who owns a home will not be able to forget what I said. This is like, if you own a home and you don't want to deal with all of the hassle of a flood, and you haven't turned your water on or off within the past couple of years, definitely if you haven't done it in 3 or 4 years, when you turn off the water mains and turn it back on again, it will fail and you will get a leak, and it will be a very powerful leak because the water coming into your house is very powerful. That creates a sense of urgency. You should be writing that down if you're not writing it down. And that is, it's not fear. It's not going to happen right this second, but you know it's important and it's going to get up. Like Matthew Woodget just helped change your priorities. I just changed your priorities with that very simple story that this happened to me, and it conveyed a sense of urgency. I shared my story with you, expression, storytelling, and you now have that awareness of that story, and you can see that happening in your story. And that is the fundamental power of story and the power of 3D story, and be able to see that from all angles. The desire, you want to keep things safe and dry. The difficulty, if you turn off the water and turn it back on again, you're probably going to get a flood. And if it's been a while, you definitely will get a flood. And how do you untangle that knot? First, you write on the to-do list, then you call up a plumber, and know that everything nowadays costs like $1,000 to get the tiniest little thing fixed. Budget for that, and you denouement, you untangle your knot.
I hope you've untangled all your leaky knots up there.
I'm working, man, but the problem with a water knot is it's quite difficult to get your fingers in there.
Yeah, because it's a liquid. Yeah, I get it.
So if we kind of ladder this back up to what we've been talking about here, and we go back to our poor target for the day. If you were paying attention, you will notice there's a couple other tabs here. So we did have a look at some other players in the industry. Duck Creek, reimagining the future of insurance, reimagining the future of productivity, reimagining the future of reimagining. What?
This is going to be we should turn this into kind of more of a comedy, like Conan podcast, because it's kind of funny. Let's evolve evolution.
Durex, deliver protection faster and smarter.
Because you got to have both.
If you're at Duck Creek right now, you're thinking, but we know that we're faster than our competitors, and our customers want to do things faster, and we've built AI into our products, and therefore it's smart, right? So we're going to say that it's smarter, and we've got all these different things, and it's all us. That's what's coming through. There's not a single emotional word anywhere on this page, but
there isn't.
They
have all of the wrong pronouns, and stories should always evolve. Well, my most successful stories, so when I'm telling my story to myself, like, who am I? Like, it's about me. But whenever I'm having a conversation with somebody else, you have the most success of building rapport when you care to listen. And I think Matthew's tools and things like that, you guys will get into it, but it's the listening to understand what the true problem is that get you to the authentic story that you then get to tell, and that your whole entire company gets to tell to that person. And again, it's all about perspective.
Yeah. And and the beauty of this, again, it's like practicing this on yourself and your friends and your loved ones, and then your team, and then your company. This desire, difficulty, denouement, those 3 things are usable. This isn't like you've got to go spend the weekend and then come back to this on Monday and be like, oh my goodness, like I've got that business thing I need to try and figure out, right? You can literally go and start practicing straight away. So we're gonna move to bring things to a close here in a second, but I had to pick on these guys, same industry. I mean, talk about yourself. Talk about a wall of text.
I can't even see it. But apparently they're ushering in, Matthew. They're ushering in a new way.
Please come this way.
Yes, please. Here's your seat.
So, if so many players in one industry, and if you look at some of our other past streams, you can see other examples across all sorts of different tech, because we love tech. Fred and I love tech. We love tech. I like to think of myself in the way of a storytelling technologist. I love tech. Like, whether it's fake tech, real tech, AI. I mean, we could do a whole AI one. But anyway, we love tech, and we love that there's so much opportunity here for all of these companies. And it's you know, it's like Yeti versus Stanley, man. You know, the reason why Yeti won and Stanley didn't, and they're now owned by private equity, is because what did Yeti have?
They had emotion. They created adventure. They tied to what you really wanted. And Stanley was just a transport for liquid.
Yes, Stanley reached out to us a year ago and asked for help, and then didn't have the budget, probably because of their private equity friends. But anyway, that's another story.
Yeah, I know that.
Bear-proof coolers. Yeti have got bear-proof coolers. Not just a strong cooler, a bear-proof cooler, right? So again, ladder this back up to everything we've talked about today. 3 things. Get to the heart of the matter. What do you want? What does your customer want? What does your mum want? Your son want? Your friend want? What is standing in the way? What's that difficulty? And how do you untangle that? That is it. It's that simple. Desire, difficulty to do more. And it's in the Storytelling for Action playbook. And like an absolute crazy bunch of idiots, we've actually made the whole of the first chapter available at no cost. If you go and trade us your email, and I guarantee it's worth trading your email for, on the website. You can. I recommend buying the book just so you've got the paper. It's very tangible, sitting down, being able to just get into your own headspace and focus, externalize this kind of stuff, and just the magic of paper and pen, because it is literally workbook. It's coming up with your plays and loads of examples, loads of fun examples there. So tool that I hope you find useful. And the next question, Fred, I want to ask you, what do we want everybody to do next?
I think the first thing we want them to do is to go to gonarrative.com and look at all the great resources that you've provided for free. I personally have done the why exercise, which I loved, by the way, and I think it you know, and our whys change, just like, you know, any process. But I'd say, you know, figure out what your story is. I'd make it personal. I'd first start with, don't panic. Your story is yours, but you have to take the time to think through it. There's going to be obstacles in your story. You're going to go back and, you know, Matthew's going to win a Guinness World Book of Records for being the longest term self-journaler. But even if you haven't journaled for, you know, almost 40 plus years, you know your story. And I just recommend going back and finding out your why. And once you find that out, you can kind of go beyond that. It's about making the right assessments. And none of this should be scary. This all should be excitement. And I'd say go to gonarrative.com, look at some of the resources. My email will be up there shortly. You can feel free to reach out to either of us. I'm happy to meet with any of you if you have further questions, but there's so much rich content that Matthew and his team have already put together there. I've seen it in working practice at several companies, including Microsoft, that still really use a lot of that. And I say, you know, go find out what your story is. And if you're working on a project at one of your companies, you know, use some of these tools. And if there's anything that we can do to help you with those stories, to help you think through them, think through the obstacles. I think the biggest thing is just be authentic to yourself and really be a rhino or a buffalo and just charge through any storm that gets in front of you. Those obstacles, those just help you know what not to do with the story going forward.
And you know what? I love that, Fred. I love that. And it goes back to something you mentioned earlier and something we talk about frequently. And that is, it's going to be okay. Right? I guarantee you, there's some pretty dark shit in here from my past that I had to deal with. But it's okay. I survived. I found a way through. I don't have to, my story's not broken. Your story's not broken. It's just understanding your story. And you mentioned the why, and Fred and I can both tell you that the beauty of knowing your why is it is the tip of the iceberg. And from our experience of all of the work and what I've spent the past almost 40 years doing of understanding my story and seeing how that connects to my why, I can guarantee you that if you know your why, you're starting to tap into that power. And that when you go out and live the story that you're going to live tomorrow and tell the stories about yesterday that you're going to tell tomorrow, that you will be set up for success. And I think all that else there is to say is thank you for tuning in. Thank you for Esther for being so interactive today. And thank you, Fred, for joining not just today's stream, but the collaboration that we're working on together now to next level this. And Fred, I'm going to kind of just whisper in your ear here, like we have a limited set of seats that we allow for our clients, and we're actually almost full on that right now. We've had to let some clients go recently that just weren't.
You mentioned that to me, and so if people are interested, there's still a few seats left. I will tell you, that limited edition is definitely worth the quick response on these things. Matthew, it's a privilege to get the chance to work with you. It's a privilege to address this audience. I hope you not only learned something, but back to the notion of story, I hope you feel empowered. I hope you feel excited about your story, because you should. Don't panic about any storms that are in your way, because you can handle it. And just enjoy the process and the journey. But the sooner you start to do this, it's great. Yeah. Scratch that itch. Tell the story. Your story is awesome.
Your story is awesome. And you know what? We want to hear it. We want to hear it. And we will hear it when you reach out to us to do the story discovery, because that process, that hour long that we sit down, or the Fred or myself sitting down with you to do that interview, is a joy for us. It's like we shouldn't be getting this much fun out of it, because we get to hear your story, and that is so powerful. And you have so much power in you to go out and figure this out for yourself and your business. And it's a hell of a lot of fun as well. So thank you, everybody. Thank you, Fred. Thank you, Esther. Thank you for tuning in. Appreciate your time. And we hope that you have a great time making, living, and telling your story. And we'll see you next week.
Agreed.